Hey, coaches. Today we're going to be talking about how do you coach the I don't know scenario, especially around the agenda setting or the setting up the coaching agreement. When you are setting the coaching agreement for the entire relationship or an individual coaching session, we are what we're I think most wanting to avoid is for the coach to do too much work. To put it rather bluntly, when the coach does too much work, that means that the coaching isn't happening. Instead, the coach is getting into some sort of weird advice giving and begging for the client to do something with the session so we get out of the hot seat. If a session starts out with an I don't know that isn't thoroughly processed, the coach you feel this crazy heavy burden on your shoulders. Every stopping point, the coach has to make the decision about what is the most relevant and useful thing to say next. As an incredibly difficult thing to do. And if it isn't difficult, then the coach's mindset in that spot or their overall coaching mindset is that it is up to them to determine what this person most needs in their life every single step of the way in the coaching session. And that is just not a fun place to be. And we know that that's not going to be very effective. When we go into advice giving, when we take charge of a conversation in this helping space, that immediately shuts off certain parts of the brain that make it to where the person on the other side, the client, they don't have to do any work. Coaching, one of my favorite things to say, you'll probably hear me say it way too often. Coaching is not about helping people feel comfortable. Coaching is about helping people feel uncomfortable in a very safe way. We want them to set the stage for themselves, and we're going to do everything we can to help them make it look great. But I am not put any props on the table myself, or if I do, it'll be very sparingly. Let's get started. I don't know. What do you want to focus on today? I don't know. Your boss paid for the coaching. What would you like to work on? I have no idea. Tell me. I mean, this is all bread and butter, everyday coaching where you get into coach training, you're like, oh, I can't wait to work with that person who's excited about coaching. And then you work with someone who doesn't really know what coaching is and you're stuck. What do you do? This was one of the first pieces I ever put together on my own for coaching and coach training. Like, how do you help a person? First off, you ask the question that you were already going to ask, assuming that there's something that's going to be there. You even if there's been a pattern that every time you have a coaching session, you say, "So what would you like to focus on here today?" And they every time so far I've said, "I don't know, you tell me." Keep at it. Every coaching session, start with that same kind of question, but do it in a way that is psychologically safe. There's absolutely no judgment if they don't know. In fact, you are very comfortable and you express that is completely fine. I mainly just ask so that I always want you to have the first word as we set the stage. And just as a quick reminder, you'll always get the most out of the coaching as you set up the expectations and if you come with something particular. Now, if you're working with someone who is directly, direct pay, they're seeking out your coaching, there needs to be something like more contractual that says they need to be prepared for the session in order to work with you. There's no sense in this being the normal experience if it's a direct pay client. But again, most of the training here is around sponsored coaching where the corporation, the company is paying for it. And those sponsored settings, the I don't knows are even more. And you have to be able to deal with those in a way that doesn't shut down the relationship. It's still open. So don't stop asking. Don't stop asking tough questions. Don't stop reflecting on things and seeing what they're thinking behind the scenes. Don't stop asking questions around how they'd like to kick off the session or what the significance of the session story or subject is. Keep asking those questions and ask it in a way that's just very open. Like, I truly believe this person's capable, so I'm going to ask the question. And if they say, I don't know, then we go to part two. When a person says, I don't know, it's not a statement of reality. Oftentimes, it's a statement of habit. Like it's not even a statement. It's more of just a habitual thing that they do in order to buy time. So in a coaching session, a person says, the coach says, what would you like by the end of our coaching session? I don't know. In that moment, the person, in my experience now, the person is just buying time. When they are asked a question all the way back in high school and middle school by a teacher, the safest thing to do is for them to say, I don't know. Please stop talking to me. Everyone in the class is looking at me. And that carries over with your first boss and all sorts of things. And like in a college setting when you're expected to do some maybe Q&A or all sorts of settings in life. I don't know is more of a defense mechanism. It's more born out of a habit of self-protection. I want that spotlight off of me so bad. I'd rather say that I don't have any knowledge at all than to appear like I'm unintelligent, which is, of course, with all human behavior, it's very contradictory. And it's also betraying the reality. This person does know. Oftentimes, they do have a sense of how they could grow as an individual, how they might be able to use the coaching, what they really meant by that laugh that they just had. They just throw out the I don't know to make themselves feel a bit safe, in my experience and opinion. In that moment, we want them to have the time that they are trying to buy. I don't know is oftentimes just a case of needing a bit of time to think about it. I don't need to say anything. I could say, or I could just kind of not look at them directly in the eye. I don't want them to be like grilled, but I want them to have some space. I'll give them like 5 seconds. Most of the time in that waiting game of 5 seconds where it's really non-judgmental, I'll like nod my head and look down to the side, just kind of give them some space. They get scared. They get like, oh no, this is worse than the teacher calling on me. Now everything's just paused. I mean, think about it. 5 seconds of someone just giving you time. Most of the time, they're going to want to fill it with something that is related to the question. And that's all a coach is asking, that they give it a shot. They just give it a shot. So give them 5 seconds space, non-judgmental, not looking at them directly, nodding your head or something along those lines. If it goes more than 5 seconds, go ahead and narrow the scope of the question. So instead of what do you want to work on with our session today, take into account what you have already been working on. Or if this is the first time you're ever working with this individual, take into account that they are a professional in the space. Or if you know stuff about the company and their expectations, ask about that stuff. So here's some examples, and you'll see them on the screen. If you have been working together on, say, a fitness plan, given what you've experienced this past week, what do you think is going to be the most important challenge you want to be prepared for, given the next couple of weeks between now and the next time we talk? What would you like us to work on in terms of your professional development? Or just say, what would you like to see happen over the next 3 years with your professional journey? So instead of what would you like us to work on with our coaching over the next 6 months, go broaden out the scope and narrow things down to professional experience. Over the next 3 years, what would you like to have change in your professional experience by then? If it's an individual session, think about what the overall agenda or agreement was. So as we set things up 2 months ago, you really wanted to be prepared for that promotion. What's the next thing you want to look at in terms of that promotion? Or just find some way of narrowing the scope down to something a bit more digestible. Sometimes I don't know just means the question was just too big. It felt too big, too broad. Help them answer it. The more a coach helps them answer it, the easier it is to answer the question when it is broader, because they'll know how to play the game. And a person oftentimes doesn't want to play a game that they don't know how to win. So there is this idea that we're going to help them play the game. If they're still very stuck, then you want to give them some options, but in no particular order. If I'm working with my kids and let's say that we want to go out to eat, I'm going to say, so we've got 3 options here, kids. Do you want to go to Culver's? Do you want to go to Papa John's? Or do you want to go to Five Guys? Well, if it's a young kid, they're all going to know that the thing they ought to say, and they will say, is Five Guys, because that's the way Dad loaded the options. The third option's always the easiest. And if you have that little tilt, that little tone in your voice, it says, this is the right answer. Everyone picks up on that, even in adulthood. If it's a tense moment and they don't know what to say, oftentimes they can latch onto the last thing. And a coach can also, I think it's very human nature for us to layer in options in any of our conversations the way we want them, landing the last one with what we want most. As a coach, you want to come at these options that you offer in no particular order. It could be, we could look at the relationship with your manager that we've talked about before. We could look at how you want to be growing over this next month as a leader for your direct reports, given the feedback you saw in the 360. Or we could talk about how the fiscal year is going to end and any concerns you might have for those. Honestly, I'm not exactly sure what's going to be best, but here's some options. What occurs to you out of those, or any other ideas that come to you for what we should focus on today? And notice the way I did that. I gave a bit of a pause and a break state, you could say, after those three options. I don't know what's best. As you've heard those three options, which of those are most interesting to you, or what others might have occurred to you? Now you're still giving them the control. You're still giving them the opportunity to add more, but you have helped kickstart their creative mind to hone in on what they might like to explore with the coaching. Sometimes there's still an experience where the individual is going to not contribute. In this case, it's not that they don't know. They've been given legitimate options, and now they're saying, I don't know, because they don't want to go here. They don't want to explore. And if a coach is faced with a scenario where the individual they're coaching is not wanting to be coached, it would be, in my opinion, and I think the ICF would agree, it's not right for the coach to keep going. It's not right for the coach to decide. The I don't know in this case is saying, in my experience, it's often saying, I just don't want to do this. In that moment, after you've narrowed the scope, you've given some silence, you've narrowed the scope, you've offered some options and still opened the door for their contribution, and they still say, I don't know, then it's time to back up. Talk about the nature of coaching. Hey, I just want to take a real brief pause. These sessions are just for you. There's no right answer here. These sessions are designed for you, helping you with whatever you want out of your professional development. As your coach, I'm not trained, and I don't believe it's right for me to impose what I think you should be doing onto your goals and onto your life, because you are you, and you have your own unique story, and I'm here to help you pursue whatever goals you want. And if this situation ever happens, I just want you to know that we do not have to coach today. I'm not going to force coaching on you. But with every session that we do, there's going to be an expectation that you make the ultimate decision about what you'd like us to focus on. And I'll help you as much as I can in picking options, but I can't give you the option. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. So that's just a revisiting of the explanation of coaching that we've talked about already. You want to make sure to clarify what coaching is in this moment instead of moving forward. Because as soon as you move past that final I don't know, in my opinion again, we've moved out of coaching. We're no longer there because the coach is taking full responsibility of where this conversation's going and where this person should go next with their lives. That's just way too much work on the coach's shoulders and way too many expectations on the coach. Coach the I don't knows by not making things more comfortable and taking charge, but making things uncomfortable safer. Follow the structure. It should really help. I do hope that helps. Thank you for coaching.